Hi, welcome to a quick getting started guide for deploying a ceramic node on DigitalOcean using Kubernetes. This example is going to require a DigitalOcean account and the Git command line client, which is probably already installed. Um, in addition to those requirements, we're also going to need two tools. We're going to need the DigitalOcean command line client, doctl, and the Kubernetes command line tool, kubectl. So let's do a quick install of those tools. If you're on Mac OS and using Homebrew, it's very straightforward. It's just a brew install doctl kubectl. Um, Installing these tools on other operating systems is pretty straightforward as well, pretty well documented across the internet. We can include some links in the video description here to kind of help out, but should be a fairly painless process. Okay, so now that the tooling is installed, let's go to our DigitalOcean dashboard and click on Create Kubernetes. There's a lot of information here. The only thing that is particularly important that you definitely want to pay attention to is the data center region. So just try and pick something close to you or close to where your users are going to be or something else that makes sense for you. Then we just scroll down here to the number of nodes. We only need one node for this example. It's a dev deployment. Yeah, a single node should be able to handle what we're going to deploy today. So you scroll down to the bottom and click on Create Cluster. It's going to take you to this cluster creation page. DigitalOcean is going to start doing its thing. It's going to start deploying the cluster for us and the node that we asked for. While that process is happening, you're going to see a little spinner spin. You're going to see a little progress bar progress. And basically, at this point, we just need to wait. All right, looks like our cluster is done provisioning by DigitalOcean. We got a nice little green dot here showing us that everything should be good. So now we're going to move on to the second step, which is connecting to Kubernetes. And this is where DigitalOcean will provide us with a command line to run to download the authentication information for the cluster. In order to do that, we're going to need this doctl tool. And in order to use that, we're going to have to authenticate to DigitalOcean. So let's go to our API settings in the DigitalOcean dashboard, click on Generate New Token, give it a name, and then copy the provided key. So to authenticate, we're going to do a doctl auth init-t and the token string. Once we have that authenticated, we'll go back to the cluster, grab this command. Now we should be able to download the authentication information for the cluster. And we'll just check that we are indeed connected. So that all looks good. You can see the node that we have provisioned. We have a single node in the cluster, so everything looks happy. The example deployment expects a namespace called ceramic. So let's go ahead and create that real quick. Then inside that namespace, it expects two secrets: a secret for the ceramic admin did seed, as well as a Postgres user account password. So these are values that you might already have existing, but for this, in this instance, we're just going to go ahead and create random values for those secrets, and then they'll be in the cluster and accessible if you need them. But if they're unimportant, then don't have to worry about it. So to do that, let's go ahead and clone the project repo that we're working out of here. Enter that directory, and then we're going to do this create secret script. It's in the Kate's base composedb create secrets. And there it says it successfully created the two secrets that we need. And after that part is done, we're actually ready to deploy the stack. So that is going to be a kube control apply-k Kate's base composedb. So this will deploy all of the resources inside this composedb configuration. All right. So let's see what All right, so checking the pods in the ceramic namespace now, we can see the ComposeDB node is initializing, an IPFS node is getting created, and the Postgres node is being created. It's going to take a little time for the step as well. Basically, we were downloading the Docker images. The ComposeDB has a script, an initialization script that runs that's on startup, so it's going to take a little bit longer. But yeah, basically, we're going to sit here and wait for all three pods to become running. All right, so let's check our pod status again. So we see all three are in the running status. So they should be ready to go. How do we connect to this port? How do we connect to the node from like a local developer workstation? We can use the kube control tool to port forward from your local workstation or laptop into the cluster to access the resources directly. So let's do that first. That is using this command called the subcommand called port forward. I'm going to do it on the ceramic namespace, and let's do this pod on 7007. So you see it's going to create this port forwarding on localhost, and basically it's mapping and routing this traffic into the cluster. So if we go over here and we open a new terminal and we run curl, locally you can see we're hitting that tunnel, going through, hitting the node in the Kubernetes cluster, and it's alive. So basically now we can access this node through this network address, but that's only useful locally. So only good for development purposes. So we kill this tunnel, then we can no longer connect. So let's go ahead and do one more step and deploy an ingress for the Kubernetes cluster that will allow external traffic. So anybody on the internet to be able to hit the node using the Digital Ocean load balancer service. So let's install that service. All right, so now if we get services from namespace ceramic, you're going to see now there are two ComposeDB. There is the internal one that's only local to the cluster, and then there is this LB one that is of type load balancer that is going to be exposed outside the cluster. You could do these on the same service. Maybe it's good practice to separate, have different connections depending on your environment, but in this case, just to explicitly show that these are different connections and different types. But we'll see under external IP, there is no external IP for most of these services. They're internal only. But the one we just deployed of type load balancer will have an external IP address, and it's just pending. So basically what this means is we asked DigitalOcean to give us an IP address and then route it to this service for us inside the cluster. And they're taking care of all the hard work. So they're working on that for us. And in the meantime, we're just going to chill and wait for that to stop being. All right, so we just wait around a little bit, and DigitalOcean took care of allocating our IP address here. So what that means then is we can go over to this command. We can take out this loopback address, put in the IP address that DigitalOcean allocated for us, and you can see now we can access the node remotely across the internet. So this is now accessible from anywhere, any app, any computer can now access your Ceramic node. You will need the admin seed to do any admin operations on it, so you're okay there. But yeah, the node is up and ready to go.